before the season starts, or maybe even 2 weeks, is going to?
Yeah, great question, really. You wonder, and you never know going against yourself, and is it sketchy out there now? But you get a pretty good feel. Right now, our guys are pretty crisp. They're having fun. I think their minds are a little bit better right now than they were a week ago, or 10 days ago, or 15 days ago. But even with missing spring ball, I think we got a smarter team. I know we're going to put a better team out there on the field this year offensively than we did against Virginia last year. Just knowing what they're doing, they're just way ahead mentally of where they were. So I feel right now we're going to put a good product. Once we find out who we're playing, which we still don't know. We're dancing around with a few folks right now, but I feel good with us, finding somebody for the 12th, and I feel good that we're going to put a good product out there. It's going to be fun to watch. I really do. It'll be too bad if there's no fans in the stands, but I think, put your TVs on, get your popcorn, a little extra butter and salt, and get ready to go, as Paris Ford would say.
Why do you think it's so improved mentally with your team?
We did some things in the off season just during that quarantine time when they were home, and all the Zoom calls, guys. If you were on our Zoom calls and just the different things that we were able to do at that time, we weren't on the road recruiting in May as coaches, so all we had was our kids. Now we didn't have them in our meeting rooms, but we had them. If you asked any of our kids, did you learn? I mean, if you guys get your interview tomorrow, I think EJ is going to put some players. Just ask them about how were your meetings during quarantine? Did you learn a lot during that time? Was that good for you? I would tell you, if they don't say yes, then, I guess we got the wrong guys meeting with you. But I would say 90% of the kids I talk to are like, Coach, man, I learned so much, because you were able to just go in more details. And, 1 week, Coach Borbs put on an empty clinic for the guys. Like, hey, we're in empty, no backs, and just talk about empty protection, about against every total blitz they could get. The old line just walking out like, wow, they went into, like Borbs talked about just, they went into a session where they just talked about just our defense, defending our defense, or I guess attacking our defense, and what they do, how they do it. And again, every position did the same thing. I bring up Borbs just because it sticks in my mind, but every position had something like that. We got a couple new apps where we worked with our guys and just got better there. Probably something that never got mentioned. I kind of kept a secret. I can mention now because I don't think we'll ever be in a quarantine again like we were. But I was sitting there thinking we were doing so many meetings. What were we lacking is walkthrough time. So what I did was I ordered grease boards for every kid. Vicky and Lenny, from their homes had these things all sent out. Got the address. We sent a grease board to every player, so they had a grease board. So Coach Partridge could say, "Hey, draw up, this formation, and." And then draw up this front or defense, and then the kids would go, okay, here it is, and they put it up in front of them. So it was just another way of, walking through on a grease board. So, you just think about how you learn, visually, your senses, hearing, listening, talking it, writing it. So, I mean, we couldn't walk through. So what else can we do? So I think a lot of those things helped. And I kept that secret. I didn't really want anybody else to get ahead. Maybe someone else thought of it, but no one. I was always looking for different ideas, but I never found anybody say that as an idea.
Coach, last week you talked about Joey Yellen stepping in, and now that you've had some practices and some work to evaluate jumping into a new program, and you made a good point, under this circumstance, even more so than any regular season, you never know what might happen, so you have to have at least two guys who are able to go. How do you evaluate where he stands today?
You know what? Quarterbacks are hard to tell unless you get them in a scrimmage. And but I'd say there's a lot of competition at the quarterback position right now. Between Patty and Joey and Davis. I mean, right now there's a battle going on between all three of those guys for that next guy. And you've really got to be ready for three of them. To be honest with you, you never know what's going to happen with COVID, and you never know when it's going to strike you. We actually worked a lot of Wildcat where, you got a tailback back there as well. Because if you got in a jam and you got down your fifth tailback, you might be stuck to that. So we worked actually more Wildcat, where tailback is back there, period. Just knowing that, at any time you could be without a quarterback. But, quarterbacks are doing good. I'm really happy with the depth, and it's just going to be a battle. I don't want to make the decision. I don't want Coach Whipple to make the decision. I want the kids to make that decision of who that guy is.
Pat, when you guys were recruiting Devin Danielson out of Thomas Jefferson, what do you kind of remember going back to that time? What kind of stood out to you as a prospect for him?
Well, Coach Chirp obviously, was very instrumental in Devin being recruited by Pitt. He spoke highly of him, but I just remember a tough dude. I mean, Devin was a tough throwback defensive tackle that we knew was going to play a lot of football for us. So I just remember watching a tough guy on tape from a tough, well-coached football program.
Pat, I'm curious, how late can you guys go before figuring out who you're going to play on the 12th?
The clock is ticking, but our GAs and quality control guys are ready to do an all-nighter once we find out. But the clock is ticking. I would hope we know something by Thursday at the latest. So it's Tuesday today. I mean, it's clicking, but it's kind of like the NCAA tournament. You play a tournament, you get to the Sweet 16, you don't know who you're playing yet. So this is like tournament time. I mean, you'd like to know a heck of a lot earlier than this. It's going to slow preparation down, but really it's equal for both of us. So it's just going to. It's going to be kind of like a game week. If we found out on the Saturday before we played them, we'd still be good. We have time to get the tape broken down, and then we just be in a normal week. We just wouldn't be any further ahead. But we'd obviously like to be a heck of a lot more prepared than that.
During a typical year, especially when you have your schedule so far in advance, when would you typically start looking at that first week opponent?
The very first day we get off of the road recruiting in May. So that was why I was so upset with, really, I'll throw it out there on the table. I think, the Big Ten, I would think every other conference did it the same way. And we put a lot of work in, and every coach in the ACC put a ton of work in. That's what you did. So quarantine, we couldn't Zoom it with our players all day. So we Zoomed together, and I'd be on with the defense staff, and the offense staff would be on with the offensive staff, and we'd be breaking down, watching, Miami, Ohio. We spent a week on Miami, Ohio, maybe more. With all their tendencies, knowing what they're doing, this is who they are, this is what we're going to do. You put a summer game plan in so that when you get to the season, you're not cramming it in. So when the ACC, scrapped our entire schedule and then made up their whole new one, it's kind of like, why are we doing that? Every other conference said, okay, here's your 8 or 9 ACC or Big 10 or Big 12, teams that you're playing, and add 1 or 2. We decided not to do that, which really, we were prepared for North Carolina game. We were prepared for Virginia. We were prepared for Duke. And all of a sudden, we just wasted a lot of time. And so did Virginia and Duke and everybody else, I'm sure.
Pat, are your guys, I know that you mentioned last week that you're keeping your players within this mindset of, they're playing on the 12th regardless of what's going on. But are they asking, hey, who are we playing right now? That's got to be tough for them.
You know what? They don't really care. To be honest with you, we're preparing for the 12th. And, we wouldn't be preparing for that opponent right now anyway. So we're really just, right now we're working on Pitt. We're working on who we are and what we're doing better and getting 3% better. So right now we're working on beating Pitt right now, okay? Trying to be better every day. So, they're not ready to talk about an opponent yet, okay? They're ready. We're just worried about ourselves for now. And then when the time comes out, I would say next week we would like to start. I would say Monday. No, we can't meet up on Monday. I would say maybe Sunday afternoon, we'll start to prepare for hopefully an opponent and give them a kind of a game plan. Hey, this is who they are. Here's the depth chart. This is what they look like. This is the starting quarterback. This is the right defensive end, and we'll start to do some of that. But it'll start. We'll next week probably have a little bit of scout team, I guess.
Coach, what can we read into the scrimmage? This vaulted defense, and you're saying that they were tied at the end. What can we read deeper into that?
Well, you can read whatever you like. I think there's a lot to read. There was some explosive plays by the offense that kept them in. I think the defense didn't play bad, but it only takes one play and one guy not to do the right thing. We had a substitution issue, because the offense's tempo a little bit. Probably faster than we were a year ago. We got caught with some guys on the field. And we had a free play. It just takes one play. We had a red zone area where, we had a stop, I believe, but then we had a personal foul on the defense. I won't tell you who it's on, and first down. So the game. So it could have been a lot different than it was, but it's, it's game-like situations that we try to put our kids in, and you got to play it like it's a game. So there's little issues that kept really maybe the offense in the game longer. Maybe they should have. But that's a credit to our offense doing the little things right, and it's something that we got to work on defensively. Is not hurting ourselves.
Coach, you talked last week about your excitement to see Izzy and some of the younger running backs that you had on your roster. What did you see out of them, and how's AJ Davis doing? I know he got dinged up a little bit, but you said he'd be back soon.
Yeah, say that one more time. I'm sorry, Chris.
I'm sorry. I just asked about the running backs because you were really excited about them.
Yeah, I had some text message coming up across the top, and I'm reading this about Montana State, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? But sorry, apologize. So the running backs, you want to know about the running backs?
Yeah, because you were talking about you were excited about Izzy last week, and you mentioned AJ got a little banged up, but that he'd be ready to go again soon.
Yeah, AJ was still banged up, so he was not as ready as we want. But Izzy looked good. You know who really looked good is Izzy. Izzy's got speed, made some plays. The guy that looked really good out there was Daniel Carter. Really, I mean, just a big back. I mean, I don't know what he weighs right now. I have to get a strength staff to give me a weight chart, but he's got to be about 230 pounds. But Daniel ran with his pads low and with some leverage and was hard to get down. So Daniel looked good, and obviously, Vince Davis has had a great camp as well, and Izzy's been good. So all three of those guys stood out in some way or some shape or form. There was nobody that was like the guy as far as that goes. I mean, I tell you, Jordan Addison caught a ball down the sideline and took off like he was shot out of a cannon. He's going to be special. Those were, a couple of things. I think, the other guy, there's really two other receivers when you think skill guys on offense. I know you asked a running back question, was Aiden Henningham has really been impressive, and Jalen Barden are both two young guys that have, really been good since the beginning. I kind of said last week, a couple of guys that I forgot maybe to talk about, and those are two more guys that I wouldn't be shocked to see those two guys playing for us this year as well.
You talked about the cornerbacks last week. What about the freshmen there? Do you see those guys getting into the two deep?
You know what? It'll be interesting. Rashad Battle, I think maybe our last recruit that walked on campus in January has played well, and so is Javante Royal. I mean, those two guys have stood out. Hunter Sellers as well. But I would say really right now at this point, Battle and Royal are ahead of Sellers right now for whatever reason. But all three of them are working well, and one of those three is going to play for us this year. I don't know which one it's going to be. We'll find out who can get to the 15th round of this heavyweight battle. But they're picking things up well, and all three of them are tough, and they've kind of hung with us this whole time. They've gotten a lot of reps.
Pat, you didn't have a freshman defensive tackle in this class. You obviously lose Jalen Twyman. Have you moved anybody there? Have you thought about moving anybody there?
You know what? Yeah and no. Obviously, with Keyshawn Camp and Danielson, we got Devin. I mean, we got pretty good depth in there with David Green, Bentley, Kalijah Cansey. There's two guys that we've kind of toyed with. One of them is Bam Brema. He's played a little bit in there as well. He's tough. He's still learning what to do in there. And then the other guy is with the defensive end, the depth that we have. I mean, John Morgan, Baldonado playing well. Deslin's a guy that can play in, but Deslin's also a guy that can play inside. Deslin, is a really good defensive end. As we played pretty good defense with him last year at the end. I think he's like 280, and he moves really well. He's a guy that could end up playing D tackle as well if we got into a pinch. He's probably more of an NFL D tackle than he is NFL defensive end. I would say, just looking at his body when he walks in, into a meeting room. So we've worked guys in there for sure, and but I feel good with our depth where those guys wouldn't have to. We're just kind of moving guys and getting as many guys as we can get to play as possible.
What are the best things you're seeing from Paris Ford, both in the locker room and on the field?
Paris is beautiful. Paris had a pick six the other day too. By the way, I didn't mention that one, but he had a pick six. I won't tell you who threw it, But he had a nice read and broke. Paris. The thing you love about Paris is, besides everybody knows what kind of football player he is, but he brings energy to the practice field. If he's not on the practice field, it's a different energy. But he brings that energy, whether he's on the field as one of those 11 or he's on the sideline. He's talking. Okay, he loves the game of football and he's always talking. And you know what? I love those guys that talk. I mean, he has fun playing the game of football.
Does Jordan Addison remind you of any receiver you've coached or kind of had to scheme up for in the past? I know you got kind of limited, relatively speaking, he hasn't played in a game yet, but anything that he does that really stands out to you in kind of comparing other guys maybe?
I'm pretty bad at that. Kind of move on to the next game. I'm even looking back at Michigan State, just guys, some of the best receivers that you played against. I remember there's one guy, I probably don't even want to mention his name, in the city of Pittsburgh. There's one guy that, that kicked our butt one year when he was at Central Michigan, Antonio Brown. I mean, that's kind of, I didn't look at Antonio Brown until, I guess, close enough until after we got beat by him, but he's kind of built like him a little bit. He's slippery like him. And I did play against him in college and couldn't stop him. Other than that, I can't think of anybody else, that he would look like. It's hard for me to tell. But he's going to be a good football player. Real good.
Any additional questions for Coach?
Come on, guys, let's go.
Pat, I'm just curious, how did your players respond to your suggestion that they keep one girlfriend instead of 2 or 3?
I think a lot of them have taken that advice. I think they might have had one already, but you know what? Don't break up with them. Wait till after this whole thing passes. Stick with them, It's called loyalty. Loyalty to one.
Any non-romantic questions before we conclude?
I recommend that for all you guys too, Bostic. I see you over there. Okay, stick to one. Okay.
EJ, you're saying non-romantic. You just said Paris is beautiful. What's more romantic than that?
That's right. No doubt about it. What else you guys got? Any real questions? I'm trying to think. Let me go through the depth chart. EJ gave me a depth chart today. Let me see if there's anybody else I can pull out of here that you haven't heard about. Let me think here. Danny Marega the last few days at tight end has really it's kind of been nice. He's really just gradually gotten a little bit better every day, and he's really popped off the last couple of days. So it'll be interesting to see what he's doing on offense. That's one name you haven't heard about much. Looking at the defense here, we talked D-line. Patrick Jones has been great. I talked about the D-ends. I think we talked about most of these guys. Probably the other guy I'll bring up that I think has had a great camp so far is Brandon Hill at safety. I mean, he is an explosive, physical guy. Matter of fact, he's a guy that, every day I've got to say, Brandon, slow down. And, you kind of love when you have to, tell him to slow down. He's always hitting somebody. He's always diving over the pile. He's explosive. He's physical. And, I think he's had a great camp so far as well. And I talked about, Judd Talondier last week, right? Talked about A.J. Woods at corner. A.J.'s, played well at corner too, so happy where he is.
And how did Keldrick and the tackles look in the scrimmage?
They look solid. I think Coach Forbes was not as happy as maybe, coming out of the scrimmage. He kind of yelled at him. The O-line takes time to gel, and he's moved a lot of guys around in there, working different combinations. But overall, I think, Coach Forbes is, I would say Coach Forbes would have gave the O-line a C on Saturday, which I like. If he had given him an A, they'd probably come out and lay an egg here on a Tuesday. But he's constantly pushing those guys to be better. They can, we can be better everywhere. And that's why we talk about 3%. So Coach Forbes leaves a lot of room for improvement there, but we want more out of all of them. Obviously, we got a defense that can put pressure on a quarterback and can get sacks, and if you can block our defensive line, I think you're going to be okay when we get into the ACC and the rest of the conference.
Pat, other than A.J. Davis, has anyone missed any significant practice time for whatever reason?
I didn't say AJ Davis missed a lot of significant time. Jerry, don't be putting words in my mouth.
Well, has anybody missed any significant time then, for whatever reason? I didn't use the I word.
No. How's that?
That's fine, thank you.
I'll give you an update next week. How about that, Jerry?
Pat, the poll came out yesterday. Obviously, it's the preseason, and half the teams that are on it aren't even playing football this year. But you guys didn't receive even a vote. I want to stress here, by the way, the AP, I don't vote in that poll. Somebody on this call votes in that poll. You can maybe ask him why. But I'm just curious, is that something?
You said we didn't get one vote, you said?
Didn't get a vote. Not a single, not even an all.
So I don't look at all that stuff. I vote for the USA Today, which I don't think I voted yet. If I missed it. And you said somebody on this call does vote?
Somebody on this call is a voter, yes.
Okay, who is the voter? Chris Peak is laughing. Who is the voter? Okay, do not send him the Zoom link anymore. And he doesn't get to ask the first damn question. Are you kidding me, Jerry?
But on a serious note, I mean,
wait a second. I got a question for Jerry. Jerry, no, hold on. We'll come back to you. This is our Zoom call. Jerry, why?
Why didn't I vote for you?
Why did you not vote for us?
Well, that's a tough question. I'm putting
you're on the spot right now.
Well, you lost some games at the end of the season last year. You lost Twyman. I think you're going to have a good season, but I don't know, 25. I'd put you maybe at 28, 29.
I used to like you. All right, so Will, what's your question?
Pat, you said you don't pay attention, but I mean, your players do. You have a pretty, you've got a very good defense coming back, et cetera. Is that, does it tick them off, do you think? I mean, I'm sure they might have noticed it.
You know what? I'm sure they did. I wouldn't have noticed it, but I'm glad you brought it up. I would hope they play with a chip. It should just, it's typical when you got guys like Jerry voting. Bunch of clowns that don't know what they're doing. Just kind of what else just look at the source, okay? But you do have a pretty good defense coming back with some pretty good players. And, Jerry talks about losing Jalen. And Jalen did call me last night, by the way, and he asked about taking classes. So Jalen, if you're out there listening, we got it hooked up where he can still take some classes. See if we can get his degree for him. But that's one guy. Last year we lost Weaver and Camp, and knock on wood, we don't lose anybody else. And if I'm voting for whenever we do it for the USA Today, the coaches poll, I'm voting us in the top 25. I can tell you that right now. I don't know where I'll vote us, but I'll take our quarterback, any single day, and I like the football team we've got. But what the hell do I know? Jerry knows a hell of a lot more than me. I should be asking Jerry questions.
You did ask me a question.
Thanks, Will. I appreciate you bringing that up for me today. It's on my shit list.
By the way, my wife's listening, Pat.
Your wife, I love your wife. Just not you anymore. If your wife doesn't vote, your wife probably doesn't like you very much.
Pat, you said you're running a little bit more tempo on offense. Was that something that you had wanted to do in the past but just couldn't for whatever reason, or was that something specific that said, hey, maybe we could go faster here?
I think it's more of, just kind of, there's times during the season last year that we went fast, but it's just more tempo. I guess it's just a little bit more of what we did. Kenny really likes it. If you asked him in an interview, about tempo or no tempo, Kenny will usually get a big smile on his face. He likes to go fast. He wants to get the defense tired so they can't rush the passer. And that's, they like to get him tired. Even a 2-minute situation when I want to use a timeout, Whip doesn't want to use a timeout because he doesn't want the defense to get a breath. So there's different strategies and different ways to look at it. But, getting a defense tired where they can't rush the passer and they can't think is part of it. So maybe we have a little bit more of it this year than last year.
Any final questions? Okay. Thank you guys very much.